success. Your girl Lorette's a queen. This ain't like the last time. Empty promises and past lies. Didn't see them, so I cut ties. Glass eyes, glass eyes, glass eyes. Oh, this ain't like the last time. My skeletons give me a bad time. But stick around to leave me high and dry. Glass eyes, glass eyes, glass eyes.
Don't you hate on me cause you know you ain't grinding. Don't you hate on me cause you know you ain't shining. Don't you hate on me cause you know you ain't diamond. I'm gon' sip my tea, sip at my seat reclining. Heard you was talking that smack, so there's no need for hiding. Heard you putting words in my mouth, so there's no need for typing. Keep on hating, we gon' throw hands like my name Mike Tyson. Frostbite way too hypin', he don't need no hype man. Hype man, hype man. I know they mad cause I'm running right through. I know they mad cause I'm spitting my truth. I know they mad cause I'm making my moves, yeah. I know they hate, they got nothing to do. I know they hate when I run with my crew. Watch them all hate when I'm breaking the news.
This ain't like the last time. Empty promises and past lies. Didn't see them, so I cut ties. Glass eyes, glass eyes, glass eyes. Oh, this ain't like the last time. My skeletons give me a bad time. But stick around to leave me high and dry. Glass eyes, glass eyes, glass eyes.
Hello! Hello, chat. How are we all doing today? I meant to stream yesterday, but before I even said anything to my mods or anything on Twitter, I was invited to, well, a change of plans happened and I went to go do things with my family instead. So, sorry about that, but hey, I'm here now. Speaking of Twitter, I just thought I'd let you guys know that I always... Hi, Makia! What's up? I just said the same thing. Before I say what I was gonna say, actually, let's talk about what we're going to be doing on stream today. We're gonna be reading chapter 5, just like me for real. We're gonna be reading chapter 5 of The Stars and Their Children. Before we get into that though, I was talking about how I make announcements of when I'm going to be live on Twitter. So if you ever want to be updated on when I'm going to stream, it is not Claymation Live. If you do exclamation mark, yeah, there, it's in my link tree. You can get updates on when I'm going to be live, and also I wanna make my Discord server active. I know it's gonna be a bit difficult, like, it'll be a lot easier when more people join it, but, I also have a Discord server, the link is also in my link tree, so... Also, I kind of made this deal with myself on Twitter, that if I reached 50 followers on Twitter, I would promote the account. I would promote my Twitter account on my Stan account. Cause the funny thing is, I have more followers on my Stan account than on my me and my 70 alternate accounts. Yeah, if you follow the link tree, it should have my Discord, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my TikTok. I love you if you get there. I think, the only thing I could think of was when Tommy was streaming, like, the Minecraft Live thing, and he was talking about, how he wanted to get people to vote for the glare with alternate accounts. Stan account, you say. Hi, Mayhem! Yes. Oh, it's the Sonic skin. I've only seen one of them, so I might have seen, I might have seen that one, but it sounds familiar, that's for sure. Yeah. If I reach 50 followers on my main Twitter account, I will shout out that account on my Stan account, because honestly, I just want more followers, I get, like, I want to try and be a content creator, you know? My streaming account is my Stan account. Cause funny, like I said, I have more followers on my Stan account. I've had my Stan account for longer than my main, so if you, I'm sure you, like, the funny thing is, if you scroll down on my, like, main, well, technically my Stan is my main, but, like, my main, quote-unquote, if you scroll down far enough, you would probably be a bit confused as to, like, what my tweets were. That was because I started off as no, I wouldn't say an impersonator account, because the thing wasn't a real thing. I made the fatal mistake of having my stream personal account the same as my work/school. Oh no. The thing is, like, with my TikTok and my Instagram, it's always been the same. So, people from school, like, middle school and high school, follow me on my stream, like, personal account. So that's fun. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. My personal Twitter account actually started as, I used to be a big fan of 21 Pilots back in 2019, so I decided to be one of those impersonator quote-unquote, because he wasn't real, like, he's not a real thing. I decided to be Ned, the little creature from the Chlorine music video. So, my first tweet was something like, hello everyone, do people like me, or something like that. Because I remember what it was, because there was discourse about, like, if people liked Ned when the music video came out. Anyway, I got really sidetracked. That's my bad. Let's do some reading. And if there's any new viewers in my stream, be sure to drop a follow, because at 150 followers, I'm gonna do an entire stream in a British accent. So that's gonna be fun. Okay, so The Stars and Their Children is this. It's by Bones and the Bees, the same author as Tommy and Its Clinic for Supervillains, if you've heard of that. If you haven't, I'm sure you've probably, if you're on Wilbur, Twitter, whatever it's called, is the one that, like, Tommy and His Clinic for Supervillains is where Siren comes from, you know, like Wilbur with the bandana around his eyes. Gotta wash my dye. I read that as gotta wash the dye out of my eyes for some reason. Haven't read that yet, it's on my list though. Yeah, I read it on stream a few months back and it was really good. But yeah, this is called The Stars and Their Children. It's loosely based off of Dune, I think. Like, it's not the same premise or anything, but it's kind of the same world building, I guess. Hold on one second. I didn't start following you till like May, so I probably didn't see the stream, lol. Yeah, I think this happened in like the beginning of this year. Like February to April or something like that. I don't know. Alright. Now this is, trying to summarize was never my strong suit. What has happened in the previous chapters so far is Tommy is a prince. He's half Thamesian, which is a species that has siren-like abilities. Wilbur is also half Thamesian, but he's Tommy's half-brother instead of, like, actual brother. They had the same mother, but different fathers, I think. Wilbur's older than Tommy, but technically, since Tommy is the son of the king, he's inherited the throne instead of Wilbur. Wilbur is very protective of Tommy. I feel like a little kid getting ready for a bedtime story. That's my goal with these. That's why I do them so, like, not late. It's okay, it's not late for me. The sun hasn't even fully set yet. And there's some kind of conflict with the Asempi Empire. It's like 10 for me. I assumed that. I just assumed that anybody living in America is either in EST or my time zone. Never anything else. Also, I know it's technically probably supposed to be pronounced SMP, you know, like kind of a play on words of like Dream SMP. But SMP sounds cooler, so, like there's conflict with the Asempi Empire. Eret is the king regent of Eldingvegr, which is the planet that Wilbur and Tommy live in. How did you know how it's spelt? Or is it there? I forgot that you could probably read what's on screen. I've been avoiding trying to read because of like spoilers. Yeah, that is how you spell it. But Wilbur and Tommy are on the run. They had to leave their home planet because Eret made a deal that he would exile them in order to, like, and then do stuff with the Asempi Empire to remain king. But Dream is like the emperor of the Asempi Empire, I guess, and he had other plans, and he was going to kill them, execute them. Eret didn't know about that at first, but when they were talking with Dream, they decided that it was for the best. So Wilbur and Tommy fled the planet and sought asylum in the Antarctic Empire, where Emperor Philza reigns. Immigrant you. Okay. Enough of the talking. How long has this been? I've been going on for 15 minutes. I need to get the stream started. Alright. The Stars and Their Children by Bones and the Bees. Chapter 5. Familiarity in a Strange Land. Summary. The boys have their first full day at the palace. There isn't any trigger warnings, so we should be good. Bones and the Bees always puts trigger warnings at the very end of the notes section. So, let's see. Oh, and I think anything that's in italics is like a flashback or a dream, so. Wind blasted Wilbur's face as the hangar doors slid shut, the shuttle setting down on the metal landing pad with practiced ease. Beside him, Tommy whimpered at the loud noise, burying his face into Eric's shoulder to hide from it. Stand up straight, Eric gently reminded him, squeezing his shoulder as Wilbur straightened his back. Biting back a grumble, Wilbur picked at the edge of his coat. It was stiff, the coarse fabric itching his arms. The tassels that decorated the formal coat were rustled by the wind, and Wilbur tried not to think of how grating it was to hear the faint clicks of metal hitting against each other. He didn't understand why they had to get so dressed up for this. Eric was in one of their fanciest gowns, bright red and billowing out around their hips like a cloud. In their arms, they were holding Tommy, who was all dolled up in a miniature version of the same suit jacket Wilbur was wearing. He hated it just as much as Wilbur, babbling complaints in a mixture of actual words and baby talk. For now, though, he was quiet. Eric was as well, holding him against their hip with one arm, keeping their other firmly on Wilbur's shoulder. As the ramp to the shuttle lowered, Wilbur took a shaky breath. Makia. Hold on, I feel like my chair is too far from my desk. I'm gonna just... There we go. That's better. According to Eric, after hearing of their mother's death, the Themesians decided to send a group of diplomats to stay on Eldingvegr for the foreseeable future. It was part of their agreement so they could keep an eye on both Tommy and Wilbur. He didn't know why the Themesians would want to keep an eye on either of them, but it wasn't like he had a say in the matter. Also, according to Eric, the Themesians were bringing an emissary with them as well, which apparently was a special title given to someone being sent on a diplomatic mission. Wilbur didn't know what their mission was going to be, but Eric warned the emissary was going to be charged with following both him and Tommy, and Wilbur was already dreading having some random adult keeping an eye on him and his brother at all times. The ramp reached the bottom of the launching pad. The guards beside them saluted, and a group of women began to exit the ship. 1 second, I'm cleaning my glasses. There we go. The women reminded Wilbur of his mother, with fin-like ears and scales dotting their webbed fingers. Each one had a veil made of thin silver chains resting on top of her head, and more chains twisted over the tops of their colorful dresses like armor. He had to admit, that was pretty cool. None of the women smiled as their bright eyes looked both him and Tommy over. As they began to fan out into a line in front of them, though, Wilbur noticed another Themesian who had been hidden behind the others. She was a kid, possibly even the same age as Wilbur. Her chain veil didn't just cover her hair, but also her face, and through the gaps, Wilbur could make out silver eyes and hair that was almost the same shade of pink as the twilight sky outside. Her head was bowed, and Wilbur couldn't stop himself from wondering who she was. Once all the women had lined up, Eret bowed as best they could with Tommy in their arms. As King Regent, I welcome the ambassadors of the Order of Anthemisa to Eldingvegger, they said, giving the women a kind smile. The woman at the front did not smile back. Instead, she glanced between Wilbur and Tommy, narrowing her eyes. These are the sons? Eret nodded. Yes, this is the Crown Prince Theseus Thomas Ione, they said, gesturing to Tommy. And then they trailed off, giving Wilbur a look telling him to introduce himself. Stepping forward, Wilbur bowed, although it was stiff. Prince Orpheus Wilbur City, he said, wincing when he tripped over the accent in city. Where did city come from? The name your mother gave you is Orpheus Wilbur, the Themesian woman told him, her tone sharp. The late king gave him the name City when he first arrived here with his mother. Eret hastily explained. It's an Eldingvegger name. Of course, the woman sneered, not bothering to hide her distaste for that in the slightest. If the child was a girl, Queen Marina would likely take issue with a daughter of Themis being tainted with a foreign name like that. But he's only a son, so we can let it be. Wilbur kept his eyes on the ground. Eret squeezed his shoulder again. I'm glad that's not an issue, Eret said after a moment, their voice tight. I was told there was an emissary being brought along this trip. The woman's narrow eyes softened, and she turned around, gesturing for the young girl to step forward. The girl did, blinking rapidly behind her veil as she twisted her fingers into her dress. May I present Lady Nikki Niachu, emissary to the Order of Anthemisa, the woman announced, resting both her hands on the girl's shoulders. As according to our alliance agreement, she will be attending to both the boys, to ensure that there are no attempts at manipulating the future of the relationship between Eldingvegger and Themis from Eldingvegger officials. Eret blinked, blank eyes wide with surprise. They recovered quickly, though, giving the girl a gentle smile. It is a pleasure to meet you, Lady Niachu. The girl, Nikki, dipped her head in respect. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Your Majesty. Her voice was far softer than the woman's was, and judging by how hunched over she was just as nervous as Wilbur. The woman then tapped her shoulder, before nudging her forward. Nikki nodded, taking a breath before she stepped right in front of the three of them. Prince Theseus, she said stiffly, curtsying to Tommy, who was falling asleep on Eret's shoulder now. Then she turned to Wilbur and curtsied again. Prince Orpheus, I look forward to working with you both, she continued, clearly reciting some script she had been forced to memorize. While he had no idea what working with this girl implied, he had to admit he was curious about her, especially because he couldn't remember the last time he'd gotten to spend time with someone the same age as him. When he met her eyes through the chain veil, he gave her a small smile. She smiled back. Wilbur was awoken by a soft beeping next to his head. Surprisingly, there was no moment of blissful, hazy ignorance. As soon as he was awake, he knew where he was. He was on Zephyrus 4. Tommy was sleeping right beside him, and they were set to enter into political negotiations with Emperor Vilza to see if he could help them get their planet back. And there was an incessant goddamn beeping that wouldn't stop. Rolling over, Wilbur blindly reached out for the nightstand. His fingers hit something smooth and cold, and he fumbled around for a few seconds before finally cracking open his eyes to try and find the source of the noise. There was a small disc that was glowing a faint blue color. When Wilbur tapped the top of it, the beeping stopped, before a tinny voice rang out. Hello? Wilbur blinked at the voice. Hello? He muttered back, his voice rough. Am I speaking to Prince Orpheus or Prince Theseus? Prince Orpheus, Wilbur grumbled, resting his head back down on the pillow. Prince Orpheus, would you like to have breakfast brought to your room, or do you and Prince Theseus plan on going to the dining room to eat with the others? Others? Frowning, Wilbur lifted his head again. What do you mean by others? Did this servant mean the Emperor and the Imperator? Wilbur wouldn't have imagined they'd be allowed to eat at the same table as the two of them, but if that was the case, it could be invaluable for gaining more time to negotiate. The nobles and ambassadors who live in the palace tend to take their meals there. The Emperor and the Imperator have their own private dining quarters, though. Oh. Well, that's what Wilbur expected. While a part of him wanted to say that he'd rather take the food in their room, he also knew they couldn't just hide out there until Philza and Technoblade made time to meet with them again. Besides, if there were ambassadors from other planets living in the palace, Wilbur wanted to see who they were. Staying in the heart of the Antarctic Empire was a rare opportunity, and Wilbur wanted to use it to find out as much as he could about the Empire itself. We'll go down, Wilbur said, rubbing sleep out of his eyes. I'll send a guard up shortly to escort you to the dining room. With that, the disc went dark, and Wilbur collapsed back onto his pillow with a loud groan. His stomach was already grumbling, ready for more food after having been forced to ration for the past several days in the crawl space. Glancing to his left, he saw Tommy's face half smashed into his pillow, a bit of drool trailing out of the corner of his mouth. Reaching over, Wilbur poked him in the cheek. Get up, child. We've got to go to breakfast. Letting out an incoherent grumble, Tommy smacked Wilbur's finger away. I know. I heard you talking, he muttered, turning his face more into the pillow. Why didn't you let them bring the food to us? Because we should take the opportunity to find out what other planets are under the Antarctic Empire's control while we can. And a great way to do that is to find out what ambassadors are here at the palace, Wilbur explained, already sitting up. Tommy groaned. You're so fucking strategic and shit, he mumbled. Can't you just let a man sleep? I'm gonna go use the bathroom real quick, and when I get out, it's your turn, okay? Wilbur said, his tone leaving no room for argument as he pushed the blankets off his legs. There was another unintelligible complaint from Tommy, but Wilbur ignored it as he got to his feet and walked to the bathroom. A few minutes later, Wilbur found himself standing in front of the sink, getting a good look at his reflection for the first time in days. His face was thin, cheeks hollowed out with dark bags sitting under his eyes. His hair was a ratty, frizzy mess of curls, and he poured some water on his fingers to try and tame it at least the tiniest bit. After that, he splashed some of the water on his face, wincing how cold it was, but grateful for the way it rinsed away the last vestiges of sleep from his head. He stared at his reflection for a moment too long. Even though nothing explicit had changed about his appearance, He felt as though he looked 5 years older than he had a few days ago. There was something pained behind his eyes, something that reminded him of the look Nikki gave him as he and Tommy ran away from her room, leaving her behind. Wilbur winced, thinking of Nikki. Was she alright? There was no way for him to know if Dream had taken out his frustration at their escape on her. The Themesians wouldn't be happy, but how much did Dream care about keeping the Themesians happy? You left me, he could almost hear her say, her voice slithering around his mind like a coiled snake. You lied to me. I'm sorry, Wilbur thought. The fake Nikki in his mind didn't reply. When he stepped out of the bathroom, Tommy was sitting up on the bed, dragging his fingers through his hair and making it stick up in every direction. He glanced up at Wilbur, and Wilbur tiredly pointed to the bathroom behind him. Getting the hint, Tommy stumbled out of bed, and Wilbur wandered over to the closet as he heard the bathroom door shut behind him. Opening up the closet doors, Wilbur eyed the clothing he'd brushed over the night before in search of pajamas. He could see some rather plain-looking pants and long-sleeved turtlenecks, along with several options for heavy coats. Wilbur searched to find whichever set looked like it would fit him the best. He got changed while Tommy was still in the bathroom, and Tommy came back out right as Wilbur was fitting the coat over his shirt. "What are you wearing?" Tommy asked, his hair looking much more tamed than it had been 5 minutes before. "Found it in the closet." Wilbur shrugged. "Most of it looks closer to your size than mine, though." The black pants were just a tad too short on him, which wasn't surprising, but was frustrating all the same. Still, once he put a pair of heavy leather boots on, it mostly hid the length issue, so it wasn't that big of a deal overall. The coat Wilbur had grabbed was made of a thick, velvet-like fabric that was dyed a deep shade of teal, and had a large fold-over collar. It also had a belt already attached around the waist, so he secured that as best he could, with the coat itself falling all the way down to his calves. Tommy put on a similar outfit, although the coat he grabbed was shorter, only hitting his hips, and was a lighter shade of blue. He also didn't have a belt on his, so he left his coat open, even though Wilbur knew he was going to complain about being cold sooner or later. Right as they had both finished getting dressed, there was a knock on the door that made them freeze. "That must be the guard they sent up to escort us," Wilbur whispered. Tommy let out a small breath of relief. "Oh, right." Walking over to the door, Wilbur did one more cursory glance around the room to make sure they weren't forgetting anything, even though it wasn't as though they had any possessions to forget, before he pressed a button on the wall to make the door slide open. The guard on the other side was a guy who was probably around Wilbur's age, or possibly even younger. He was wearing the same uniform as the rest of the guards, and had a thin face with a shaved head. "Oi, you the one second. Oi, you the Eldenvega princess?" the guard asked, stunningly casual compared to how Puffy had spoken to them before. Wilbur blinked. Yes. Cool. I'm here to take you down to the dining room. Ready to go?" They both nodded, and he gestured for them to follow him. "Alright, come on then." Letting the door shut behind them, Tommy grabbed Wilbur's hand as they made their way down the hall. The guard walked in front of them, his boots heavy against the stone, his long coat fluttering out behind him with every step. "So," the guard said after they'd only been walking for a few minutes. Because I'm on probation for being a hazard to the other guards, I'm assigned to basically be your taxi service for however long you're here. Wilbur blinked, while Tommy raised an eyebrow. How'd you fuck up that badly? Tommy asked, making Wilbur sigh. The guard whirled around to scowl at Tommy. What? A man can accidentally stab himself without getting shit on for it? There was a beat of silence as Wilbur struggled to stifle a laugh. Tommy, meanwhile, didn't even bother hiding it. How did you end up stabbing yourself? He gasped between laughs. It was an accident! Sometimes you have a knife and it slips. So you're more of a hazard to yourself than you are to the other guards, Wilbur pointed out, fighting back a grin. The guard's scowl deepened. I'm not a hazard at all. Sounds like you are, Tommy argued. Oh, shut up. You're like 12. The guard scoffed. Tommy gasped. Excuse you, asshole. I'm 15. Same thing, the guard said, rolling his eyes. Looking the guard up and down, Wilbur narrowed his eyes. How old are you then? You don't seem like you could be that much older than the rest of us. At this, the guard faltered. His steps slowed as he hesitated, before he squared his shoulders and puffed out his chest with what seemed to Wilbur like false bravado. I'm 18, but... Oh, you motherfucker! Tommy cut him off. You can't say shit when you're literally younger than Wilbur. The guard blinked, furrowing his brows. Who's Wilbur? Pinching the bridge of his nose, Wilbur let out a soft sigh. That's my personal name. Ah, got it. The guard nodded, before he resumed his walking. You know, I never understood that whole bit with the royals having personal names and then their proper names, or whatever you call it. Just feels a bit redundant to me. Especially since the Emperor and Imperator don't have multiple names. Wilbur shrugged. It's a formality, meant to differentiate the work we do as royals from our personal lives, I suppose. I mean, I get it, but it just seems stupid. The guard huffed. I'm just Jack Manifold. No fancy names here. Jack Manifold. That's 2 names right there, dumbass. Tommy pointed out. The guard, Jack apparently, flashed Tommy a confused look. Manifold is my surname. You know what that is? A surname? Immediately, Tommy's frown smoothed out as his cheeks flushed red. Oh, right. We don't have surnames, so I forget about them. The fuck do you mean you don't have surnames? Jack asked, frowning again. Royals don't have a need for surnames, at least not on Eldingvega, Wilbur explained, grabbing Tommy by the arm to pull him closer as they turned down another hall. If we really needed them, I suppose you could use our third names as surnames, but that's not really something we ever needed to do. The guard processed this for... No way. I just naturally said process. Fuck, I'm turning British. No! Anyway, the guard processed this for a moment, deep lines forming between his brows as he mulled it over. Then he huffed again. Fucking royals. Never gonna understand you lot. I don't think you're supposed to be this rude to 2 princes, Wilbur pointed out, although he wasn't actually annoyed with Jack's behavior. If anything, It reminded Wilbur of Tubbo and how little he cared for royal etiquette. But that reminder just made his chest ache. He was sure it was even worse for Tommy. At this, Jack let out a harsh laugh. You think I'm pissing myself, afraid that you two are gonna tell Puffy I was rude or something? Nah, there's not gonna be any ass-kissing here, gentlemen. Folding his arms over his chest, Tommy snorted. Wow, you really are a prick, Manifold. Over his shoulder, Jack flashed them a sharp smile. Right back at ya. He trailed, squinting at Tommy. Shit, which one are you? Puffy told me your names are Theseus and Orpheus, but she didn't specify which one was which. Before Tommy could yell another insult at Jack, Wilbur slammed a hand over his mouth as he answered instead. I'm Prince Orpheus, and he's Theseus, the crown prince. Jack nodded and turned away from them to keep walking. Oh yeah, the kid is the one inheriting the throne because you're the bastard. I remember now. And just like that, all of Wilbur's appreciation for Jack's frankness vanished. He stiffened, while Tommy shot him a confused look. He shouldn't be surprised. Of course, Philza would explain to his guards what he had learned about the two of them during their conversation. Still, it stung to hear even a guard casually refer to him as a bastard child, when it had been more of an open secret back on Eldingvegr, one that everyone knew about but no one brought up. Thankfully, they didn't have to stay with Jack for much longer, because it was only one more turn before they were entering the dining room. Dark stone archways lifted up a vaulted ceiling, with smooth, untouched pillars descending down to the floor. The room itself was very large and not too dissimilar to the dining hall back on Eldingvegr, save for the vast differences in color scheme and architecture. Sorry. One long dining table made of some marble-like black stone stretched across most of the room. Plates of food were piled high in the center, with various people dressed in similar finery to what Wilbur and Tommy were wearing sat at the table and ate their meals. Well, go on, Jack said, after a moment had passed. Hurry up and eat. I'm gonna wait here till you're done. Scowling at Jack, Wilbur tugged on Tommy's arm to lead him towards the table. They left Jack behind, fully making their way into the dining room as Wilbur tried to figure out where they should sit. Should they try to sit next to some important-looking person and see if they could strike up a conversation? Or should they keep to themselves and hope someone approached them? What was considered proper noble etiquette when you were a refugee? Wait, what? Oh no. I don't know how to do Welsh. No! Oh, this is gonna be awful. Sorry. Tommy! Wilbur and Tommy both whirled around, hearing Tommy's name shouted across the dining room. Before Wilbur could even try to process the fact that someone here was calling Tommy not just by his personal name, but by his nickname, there was a figure running towards them, and both he and Tommy recognized them at the same time. I honestly forgot that Amesy was in this. It was in the character list. Amesy? Tommy exclaimed. As soon as he said their name, they were throwing their arms around him, and he was hunching over to hug them back. Wilbur could only stare in shock at the two of them, because one, neither of them had seen Amesy in years, and two, he didn't have the slightest clue why they'd be on Zephyr's 4 of all places. Amesy didn't look all that different from the last time Wilbur had seen them. They had a white knit cap shoved on top of their head, and the small red and white flowers blooming from their cheeks and hair seemed just as healthy as ever. Surprisingly, they were dressed in similar Antarctic Empire fashion to Wilbur and Tommy, with a white button-up shirt tucked into high-waisted trousers, and a heavy teal coat resting on their shoulders. After a few seconds of hugging, Amesy pulled back, and their dark eyes fell on Wilbur. Holy shit! Will's here too? Wait, Will's here too? Here. Wait, how does the... Oh, hi, Shaq. What's up? I'm trying to get Amesy's accent right for this. Here. No. Here. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. Tommy blinked. Yeah, we're both... Well, it's kind of fucking complicated. What? What's going on? Amesy asked. What are you reading? It's called The Stars and Their Children by Bones and the Bees. The same author that wrote Tommy and Its Clinic for Supervillains, if you're familiar with that. Let's see. Shit. Wait, no. Amesy asked, furrowing their brows in concern. Not really? Okay, So, well, this story, it's, I think it's loosely based, like, the world building is it a book? No, this is fan fiction for, some Dream SMP members. But it's really well written. Bones and the Bees knows how to write. Shit. This was going to be awkward to explain. After a second of hesitation, Tommy shot a pleading look at Wilbur. Will, do you want to explain? Fuck. Yeah, okay. Do you know them as well? That's fair. Also, I do accents, like the accents that match the content creators in these. So if it's cringe, I'm sorry. It helps with my immersion. Taking a breath, he dragged a hand down his face as he tried to gather his thoughts. The gist of it is that, remember Eret? The King Regent who was ruling until Tommy turned 18. Amesy nodded. Yeah, the one who wore all the fancy dresses and had the white eyes, right? Yup, that's them. They basically, betrayed us, Wilbur explained, wringing his hands in front of him. They made a deal with Emperor Dream of Vesempi to let him take over Eldingvega. Oh my god, Amesy muttered, their eyes blown wide. If you want to recommend something, I'm definitely taking recommendations. Dream tried to kill us, Tommy continued, wincing at the words. We managed to steal his shuttle to get off planet, and Will took us here so we could get asylum. Horror washed over Amesy's face as their eyes flickered between Wilbur and Tommy. I'm so... Holy shit, that's so much. Are you guys okay? How long have you been here? How long have you been here? We literally just got here yesterday, Tommy told them. God, that sounds horrible, Amesy said, folding their arms over their chest. How about Tubbo? How about Tubbo? And Nikki? Did either of them come with you, or are they still in Eldingvega? At the mention of Tubbo, Tommy flinched, while Wilbur sucked in a sharp breath. had to leave Nikki behind while we were escaping, Wilbur admitted first, dropping his eyes to the ground. Apparently, Dream had already worked out some agreement with Themis before they invaded, so I don't think he's going to hurt her, but obviously we don't know that for sure. I'm so sorry, Amesy murmured. What about Tubbo then? There was a moment of silence as Tommy clenched his jaw, refusing to meet Amesy's eyes. Amesy didn't push, simply waited as they picked absently at the flowers growing on their hands. After a few beats, Tommy took a shuddering breath and straightened back up. What themes do I like more? I really like fantasy. Things I will not read on stream are NSFW. Like, I won't read NSFW of any kind. Ship fics I would kind of be okay with, as long as they don't break like, if they're about the people, like, if they're about real people, as long as it doesn't break the boundaries of those people. Yeah, basically, that's about it. If that's what you were asking. Let's see. After a few beats, Tommy took a shuddering breath and straightened back up. Tubbo betrayed us, he said quietly. Amesy gasped. What? The night the invasion happened, he came into my room trying to get me and Will to take sleeping pills and was weirdly pushy about it. Later on, after the invasion had started, Will and I were hiding and overheard Tubbo talking to Eric. He knew it was going to happen ahead of time, but... He paused, curling his hand into a fist. Oh god, oh shoot, I'm sorry. I should have... I forgot to warn you about posting links in chat. I'm so sorry. What's it called? Once your timeout is up. I'm really sorry. I forgot about that with Fossilbot. He didn't try to warn us. He knew, and he didn't try to help us at all. That can't be right, Imsy said, shaking their head. Tubbo wouldn't do that. He's your best friend. Yeah. Tommy, wait, that's just rude, Fossilbot. I didn't do anything. It's a like, I don't like links being sent in chat, so, it was a precaution that I had to take. I'm sorry. Search for choice of robots from choice games. Okay, let me make a note of that. Is it on AO3? Web. Is that like another website for... Oh, are you just saying if I look it up in general, I should be able to find it? Yeah, Tommy huffed, swallowing down a lump in his throat. I thought so too. Amesy frowned, reaching out a hand to rest on Tommy's arm. He gave them a grateful smile, although it was obviously lined with pain. But you need to pay for it, but you can play 2 chapters for free. Wait, play? Oh, is it a story-based game? Because I'm all down to play a story-based game. I love story games. Oh, like an interactive book. That's cool. Ow. Let's see. I will. I'll look it up and see if I want to stream it or not. I might. We'll see. I'm really glad you're safe now, at least, Amesy told them after a moment, giving them a small smile. There's no way Dream will be able to get you here. He wouldn't mess with the Antarctic Empire like that. That's the hope, Wilbur huffed, leaning against Tommy's back. Wait, speaking of the Antarctic Empire, Tommy then cut in again. Why are you here? Immediately, Amesy's smile faded again. Oh, yeah. I guess the news didn't really get around. About 2 years ago, Flosslium got taken over by the Antarctic Empire, they explained, wringing their hands together. Well, I guess saying taking over is a bit harsh. We agreed to join the Antarctic Empire, but it wasn't like we had much of a choice. Oh, I see. I wanted you to stream that one? Okay. I'll look into it. There we go. Or at least give it a try in this stream? I don't know. Maybe. Once this chapter's done, I'll see. I was planning on only reading this chapter. Maybe. We'll see. Because the Antarctic Empire would just invade you if you refused? Wilbur asked, narrowing his eyes. Amesy snorted. Kind of? But it was more because the SMP was already looking at taking over Flosslium, and everyone knows that the SMP isn't exactly kind to the planets it rules. The Antarctic Empire at least allows us to continue governing ourselves with only minor oversight. The only real restriction we have is that the Emperor's the one with the final say on most of our imports and exports. So he pretty much controls our economy. Oh. The Antarctic Empire ruled by letting planets mostly continue to govern themselves. Economic control versus full control. Compared to SMP, which was known for establishing puppet government officials on all its territories that were only there to serve Dream's interests, Wilbur could understand why the Antarctic Empire would be more appealing. So then, Are you here on a diplomatic mission? Tommy then asked. Amesy nodded. Pretty much. I'm an attaché for Flosslium now, and I stay here with the other diplomats so that we can go over any policy decisions the Emperor wants to make regarding Flosslium. That's cool, at least. Finally getting an official diplomat role instead of just being an assistant, Tommy said, offering them a weak smile. It's been pretty interesting, Amesy said, laughing softly. Suddenly, they blinked as if realizing something, and straightened up. Oh yeah, you guys must be starving. Come on, let's sit so you can eat. Now that wasn't something either of them was going to deny, so the brothers followed Amesy to the long table. They quickly picked out 3 seats for them, and settled with Tommy sitting in between Wilbur and Amesy. The plates were loaded with more of that unfamiliar roasted meat from the night before, along with a few vegetables Wilbur recognized, and some he didn't. There were also no fruits, save for one that reminded Wilbur of an eplee, but it was purple instead of red. Tommy piled his plate high with food, struggling to balance it as he set it down in front of himself. Wilbur restrained himself despite his rumbling stomach, getting a more normal-sized portion. Sorry. Yum. I noticed that you were a first-time chatter. If you're still here, I'm just gonna call you Shaq. How did you find my channel? Out of curiosity. Meanwhile, Ainsley didn't grab a plate, instead taking out a small handheld lamp from their pocket and tapping a switch to turn it on. Their face was cast in purple, and the flowers on their cheeks and in their hair immediately tilted towards the light source. Noticing Wilbur watching, Ainsley then flashed Wilbur a small smile. Not much sunlight gets through the ice here, so I use this to eat instead. Right. Flora, like Amesy, didn't need to eat normal food, instead getting energy directly from sunlight. Back on Eldingbecker, he remembered them complaining about how because of the permanent twilight sky, they had to sit outside for way longer than they were used to feel full. Suddenly, there was a new voice behind the 3 of them. Amesy? Amesy jumped, face breaking out into a wide grin. Rambo! Come here, sit down! I want to introduce you to some old friends of mine. Looking over his shoulder, Wilbur saw an Endirian glancing nervously between Amesy, Tommy, and Wilbur. Like most Endirian, he was ridiculously tall, but unlike most Endirian, his skin wasn't completely black. Instead, it was spotted with splotches of white, his face a near-perfect split right down the center. Found you looking just in the... Oh, okay. That makes sense. I always wonder, I always am like, people don't just scroll through the just chatting just scroll through categories to try and find something that they enjoy. I guess I was wrong. One time I showed that to another streamer and he loved it, so, oh, okay. Which streamer? You think? I probably wouldn't know him, but worth a shot. His hair was similar, mostly black and falling to his shoulders, with bits of white streaked throughout. The unusual Endirian, Rambu, was dressed in a very expensive-looking white blouse embroidered with purple and blue stitching of what Wilbur was pretty sure was supposed to be stars. He was also wearing lots of silver and gold jewelry, from necklaces to rings to earrings. This guy was most likely very wealthy, and probably had some role of importance in the palace. Someone to know. He'd keep that in mind. It was in the bottom of just the chatting category as well. Oh! Well, that's understandable. Rambu sat down next to Amesy, hunching over to rest his elbows on the table. His eyes, one green and one red, darted around, never settling on one single thing. His fingers tapped on the table, and it was obvious he was nervous. Tommy? Wilbur? Wilbur? This is my friend, Ranbu. Amesy introduced. Rambu, this is Prince Theseus and his older brother Prince Orpheus of Eldingvega. Usually I like the ones that read these interactive books. It's fun knowing what each person will choose. It is, yeah. I like choose your own adventure kind of stories. But knowing it's an interactive one, I might... You're really... This is really intriguing, actually. I want to finish this chapter first, though, if you don't mind. But you're making a really compelling argument here. Mind... Oh, that's a cute emote! Let's see. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Up until this point, Rambu had been avoiding looking at either one of them. But at Amesy's introduction, his eyes snapped to the two of them, and he jumped in his seat as if he'd been shocked. Oh! You're the princes! Techno told me about you guys, but... Wait, you call the Imperator by his name? Wilbur cut in, eyes narrowing as he wondered who exactly this Indirian was. It's a primer emote, the best of the entire list. So I could use that emote. 1 second, hold on. Wait, a primer emote. What's it called? Mind manners. Or, I might be looking in the wrong spot. Hold on, this is confusing. 1 second. I might just have to use this instead. Where is it? Pop Pikachu falling. Oh, there it is! I found it! So distinguished. Anyway, let's see. Rambu blinked, shrinking back like he was trying to curl in on himself. Yeah, he's kind of my mentor. Now that was very interesting. Well, are you like the Imperator's intern or something? Tommy asked, raising an eyebrow. Oh, kind of? He's training me to be a military strategist. Oh my god! What? That is so adorable! What the? That is so cute! Sorry, I got sidetracked. If Wilbur had to take a guess what Rambu was studying, military strategy was certainly not what he would have picked. Not with the way anxiety was practically rolling off of him in waves, and how it seemed like one strong breeze would be enough to knock him over. Wait, can someone explain to me how you all know each other? Rambu then asked, furrowing his brows. Amesy perked up. Oh, right! You know how I was part of the junior diplomats when I was a kid? Rambu nodded. About 4 years ago now, there was a whole diplomatic summit being held on Eldingvega with a lot of different planets attending. Floslium was one of them, and so I was there for 3 months. All the diplomats stayed in the palace, and I became friends with Tommy and Wilbur while I was there. For the most part, Amesy spent time with Tommy and Tubbo while they had been staying at the palace. The three of them became somewhat of a trio, and almost always could be found together unless Amesy was off doing diplomat training. At the very least, it was somewhat reassuring to have Amesy here. From what Wilbur could remember, they were one of the idealist types. Someone who got into government because they genuinely wanted to improve things, which was a rare find in the field of politics these days. Tell me about it. Damn. Sorry. Oh, that's cool, Rambu muttered, seemingly unsure what else to say. You guys are here because, there are problems on Eldingvega, right? Tommy huffed. Our planet got invaded. You can just say it. Rambu winced. Seems like it'd be a bit of a sensitive topic for you. It is, but I'm not going to pretend it's not happening, Tommy grumbled, leaning back in his seat. Still, I'm sorry this happened, Tommy. Immediately, Tommy and Wilbur both stiffened. Theseus, Wilbur corrected, narrowing his eyes. We call him Theseus, and me Orpheus. But Amesy called you... Ran! You have to be granted permission to call them by their personal names, Amesy said quietly, resting a hand on his arm. It'd be like if I were to just start calling the Emperor and Imperator by their first names, Tommy cut in, frowning at Rambu. That wouldn't be appropriate, right? Rambu shook his head. Well, no, not really. I wanted you to play that also because you will have to wait a specific time until reach the next chapter, so you can be engaged in it and it be nothing to read. What? Okay. I wanted you to play that also because you will have to wait a specific time until you reach the next chapter, so you can be engaged in it and it be. Oh, I think I know what you mean. Like, it gives me. I don't have to play the whole thing, so I can see if I'm engaged in it and make a decision from there. Okay. That makes sense. Then don't call me Tommy. Clenching his jaw, Rambu gave one sharp, small nod before leaning back stiffly against his seat. A moment of awkward silence fell over the group. Wilbur and Tommy both went back to eating, while Amesy continued soaking in the light of their lamp. Robbie didn't say anything else, instead fiddling with his hands in his lap and keeping his head down. Once Tommy and Wilbur had both nearly finished their food, there was another set of footsteps behind them. Okay, that's good. You guys done eating yet? It was Jack, Just about, Wilbur said, glancing over his shoulder to raise an eyebrow at him. You're really getting that impatient. Jack scowled. Actually, I just got word that the Emperor and the Imperator want to see you, prick. Oh. Wilbur was glad he'd already eaten most of his food, because his appetite disappeared in an instant. He looked over to Tommy, who had paused mid-chew to blink owlishly at Wilbur. Then he swallowed down the rest, and fully turned around to face Jack. Do you know why he's summoning us? You think I get paid enough to be told that? Jack deadpanned. Wilbur snorted. Fair point. He stood up from his chair, while Tommy hurriedly ate the last few scraps off his plate. Then he pushed to his feet, and Wilbur noticed he'd gone pale. What's going on? Ainsley asked, giving them both a worried look. We're, having some negotiations with the Emperor, Tommy told them, and judging by the way he was shifting from foot to foot, he was unsure of whether or not to say more. Reaching out, Wilbur gently grabbed Tommy's arm and began to tug him away from the table. Yeah, we should really get going. We wouldn't want to keep the Emperor waiting. Amesy nodded and waved them goodbye. Beside them, Rambu also gave them a hesitant wave, which he just nodded at before turning around to follow Jack out of the dining room. Tommy, sticking close to his side, did the same. They followed Jack down the hallways once again, and unlike before, this time Jack didn't bother to make small talk with them. He was holding his shoulders straighter now, his head held high as he led them somewhere only he knew. The longer they walked for, the more nervous Wilbur got as he realized he had no idea what to expect. If this was the start of their negotiations, what were Philza and Technoblade going to request? If it was something ludicrous, how could they rebuttal it? Usually, there was a whole team of advisors available for a king during negotiations like these, but right now, the closest thing Tommy had to an advisor, was Wilbur. Wilbur had no idea how he was going to advise Tommy for this. In the past, he'd always been told he'd have time to prepare and study the planet they were negotiating with before advising on decisions. But this wasn't a normal situation. Wilbur barely knew anything about Zephyrus 4 or the Antarctic Empire as a whole, and he was sure that Philza and Technoblade were going to use that to their advantage. The 3 sets of footsteps echoing off the walls reflected the thundering in Wilbur's ribcage. There was always the chance that Philza and Technoblade could choose to take back their mercy and risk an Eldingvegger takeover without the crown on their side. Outside of inconvenience, realistically speaking, there was nothing preventing the Emperor from executing both of them. By bringing them here, all Wilbur had done was bought them time. Just because Tommy's neck wasn't on the guillotine didn't mean the blade wasn't still waiting above his head. This time, Jack didn't bring them to the throne room like Puffy had the day before. Instead, they were led past the imposing throne room doors, down the hall and to another set of smaller doors. Jack nodded at the 2 guards, before turning back to Tommy and Wilbur. I'll be waiting out here till you're done. And with that, the guards opened the dark doors. Tommy took a shaky breath before he grabbed Wilbur's hand again, and both boys pulled back their shoulders before making their way inside. Like all the rooms in the palace, the negotiations room was all dark stone and metal. One large window looked out over the city, while the space itself was dominated by a large circular table made of similar dark stone to the table in the dining hall. On one side of the table, Philza and Technoblade both sat. A few guards waited by the hall walls, but besides that, it was only those two waiting for Tommy and Wilbur. As the soft hiss of the doors closing echoed through the room, Wilbur kept his hand in Tommy's as he bowed, with Tommy quickly mirroring him. Once they had straightened up, Philza hummed. "Please, take a seat," he said, gesturing to the chairs on the other side of the table from him and Technoblade. They both sat down, and Tommy scooted his chair ever so slightly closer to Wilbur's so that their shoulders were brushing. A moment of silence was held taut between them like a string. Wilbur waited, scanning Philza and Technoblade's faces to try and see if he could figure out what either one was thinking. Unfortunately, reading expressions had never been in Wilbur's strong suit, and the two were masters at keeping poker faces. "You both look better than you did yesterday," Philza commented after nearly a minute, shattering the silence. "We're grateful for the accommodations His Majesty has provided with us," Wilbur said, dipping his head in thanks. Philza raised an eyebrow at this. "Damn, they really trained you well, didn't they?" Wilbur blinked. "I'm, not sure how to respond to that." "What, that wasn't part of the polite phrases they made you memorize?" Technoblade taunted. Beside him, Tommy bristled. "You gonna tell us why the fuck we're here or what?" Wincing at Tommy's crassness, Wilbur elbowed him in the side and gave him a sharp look. Tommy hissed in pain, but shut his mouth and slumped back against his chair. Meanwhile, Philza was smirking at the two of them again. "I suppose we can just get on with it, and instead of all the bullshit pleasantries." Shifting in his seat, his feathers ruffled as he folded his hands in front of him. "I thought you both might want to know that the rest of the galaxy has finally heard about Dream's invasion of Eldingvega." Wilbur's heart leapt into his throat. "What?" "A message was broadcasted to what seems like every planet that's ever had dealings with Blazophane, which basically means every planet in the galaxy. Oh wait, no, that was Techno. A message was broadcasted to what seems like every planet that's ever had dealings for Blazophane, which basically means every planet in the galaxy," Technoblade explained, resting his elbows on the table. "It was Dream declaring that Eldingvega is now part of the Asempi Empire, and that in the coming months, Blazophane trades may be delayed as new policies are put into place." "Has anyone responded?" Wilbur asked, leaning forward in his seat. "Have any statements been made? Is anyone protesting this?" "Kid, we received the message like less than an hour ago. I'm sure we'll see how the other planets respond in the next few days. We'll keep you updated as things progress, but I'm sure the rest of the interplanetary community isn't going to be thrilled about this." Philza picked up after Technoblade stopped talking. A part of Wilbur wanted to ask about if Themis had made any official commentary on the situation, but he held his tongue. Very few people knew about Eldingvega and Themis' involvement with one another, considering Themis was already closed off to nearly every planet in the galaxy and preferred to keep its political moves, like the marriage between their mother and Tommy's father, as quiet as could be. Because of that, Wilbur knew it would make no sense for him to ask about Themis, so he would just have to wait and see if Philza brought up the planet on his own. It wasn't likely, though. Considering Themis had apparently been aware of Dream's plan all along, he doubted they would make any kind of statement on the takeover and instead adopt the same policy of silence they'd taken on most major events that happened in the galaxy. Speaking of interplanetary relations, Technoblade cut in again, How are you feeling about those negotiations we mentioned yesterday? For this, Wilbur had to defer to Tommy, and Tommy hesitated for a moment as he tried to think of how to respond. Well, I need to know what you're asking for first, Tommy finally said after a few beats. Philza nodded. Yes, of course. I mean, it's a simple thing, really. If we are to take Eldingvega back from Dream, I'm sure you can guess what we're going to ask for in return. Tommy paused, curling his fingers into a fist as he shot Wilbur a pleading look. Getting the hint, Wilbur leaned closer, and Tommy turned to whisper in his ear. Is he talking about controlling Blazophane? Pride swelled in Wilbur's chest at Tommy's observation. Yes, I'd imagine that's exactly what he wants. Nodding, Tommy shifted to face the Emperor and Imperator once again. You want to control the Blazophane trade? Phil's smirk sharpened. What else would I ask for? For hundreds of years, Eldingvega has been the sole controller of Blazophane, which is how you've managed to retain your independence and wealth for so long. But if an empire were to get a hold of Blazophane, it would be a monumental source of income that could literally change an empire's entire prospects. Tommy narrowed his eyes. That's what Dream wants to do. Making a tisking sound, Philza shook his head. I'm not like Dream. Yes, I want control of the Blazophane trade, but I'm not the type of emperor to rule my subjects with an iron fist. For the most part, business would continue as it always has on Eldingvega. Practically, half the economy relies on Blazophane, and I wouldn't want to disrupt that. But I would have final say on who you sell to, how much you sell it for, how many shipments are sent out and how frequently, and of course I would receive a percentage of the profit. Grabbing Tommy's shoulder, Wilbur pulled him closer to whisper in his ear. No fucking way. We could never agree to restrictions like that. But he's not exactly saying he'd restrict us, Tommy pointed out. He's just saying he'd be the one in charge of approving shit. That's what he's saying now, but if he has the right to restrict us, then I guarantee you he's going to use it. Wilbur hissed, squeezing Tommy's shoulder. We can't give him that. Maybe we can discuss a percentage, but we can't let the Empire take control. Nodding, Tommy turned back to the two men. Can't do that, gentlemen. We could consider a percentage of the profit, but we're not giving no back control. Is that what Prince Orpheus just told you to say? Technoblade asked, condescension dripping from his words. I'm his advisor, Wilbur snapped without thinking. I've been training for this role my entire life, and any monarch is entitled to an advisor with them during negotiations. Technoblade huffed. Wasn't saying he didn't have the right. I was just curious if that was your decision or his. He doesn't make decisions for me, Tommy said, frowning at Technoblade. My brother advises me on what he believes is the best course of action, and then I can choose what to do with that information. While that is true, you are also a child being advised by another child, Philza then pointed out. 18 is the age of majority on Eldingvega, and on most planets with human residents. Wilbur shot back, bristling at the implication that he wasn't fit for his role. I'm 19, therefore I'm not a child, and I'm perfectly capable of advising my brother on these negotiations. You might legally be an adult, Prince Orpheus, but you are still very much a child. The words were eerily reminiscent to what Aerith had told him the day before the invasion, and the memory sent a chill down Wilbur's spine. I'm sure you're both aware that I am an Elytrian, but do either of you know how long an Elytrian can live for? Both Tommy and Wilbur went silent at this, sharing uncertain glances as Wilbur racked his mind to try and think of all he had learned about Elytrians. There wasn't much he had been taught about the race, considering they were almost entirely extinct. At least, pure Elytrians were. Avians were the result of the surviving Elytrian population intermixing with other species, but according to most literature, the only similarity avians really carried from their Elytrian parents were the wings, which they couldn't even fly with. No, I don't believe either of us know what the average Elytrian lifespan is, Wilbur answered after a few moments. Philza folded his hands in front of him, his talons clicking against the stone table. The average Elytrian can live up to 200 years, and often can live even longer than that. Humans like you are lucky if you make it to 100, correct? Humans like you. So Philza hadn't noticed any of their subtle siren traits, it seemed. That was good. It would be better to keep their connection to Themis a secret, just in case they ever needed a card up their sleeves. Though in the context of the question it didn't matter much. Sirens and humans had nearly the same lifespan anyway. Yes, disregarding Blazophane use, the average human usually lives to be somewhere around 90 to 100, Wilbur told him. Do you want to take a guess as to how old I am, Prince Orpheus? Philza asked, something dangerous glinting in his eyes. Taking a sharp breath, Wilbur's eyes skimmed over Philza's features. By human standards, he only seemed to be somewhere in his early 40s, if not younger. There were few wrinkles on his face, and there were no gray strands in his pale blonde hair. At most, Wilbur would say he was 42, but he reasonably could have been 35, and Wilbur wouldn't have been surprised. But by Elytrian standards, Wilbur had no clue how to guess his age. I'm not familiar with how Elytrians tend to age, so any guess I'd take would likely be incorrect. Philza laughed, tilting his head back as the harsh sound echoed throughout the room. You're so careful with your words, Prince Orpheus. I won't be fucking offended or anything, but I suppose if you don't want to try, I can just tell you. Reaching up, Philza brushed some of the hair out of his face, as his wings stretched out behind him. I'm going to be 81 this year, which is barely middle-aged by Elytrian standards. But if I was human, I would be nearing the end of my lifespan, correct? Stiffly, Wilbur nodded. Trust me when I tell you that you are a child, Prince Orpheus. You might think of yourself as more mature than Prince Theseus, but in a decade's time, you'll understand that there is very little difference between the two of you right now. What do you want us to do about it? It's not as though we can get other advisors from Eldingvega to assist us with the negotiations, Wilbur pointed out, still bristling even with Tommy squeezing his hand under the table. You're right, we can't do that, and I wouldn't expect you to trust advisors from anyone in my empire, so you are the only advisor Prince Theseus will have, Philza explained. I just hope you're both aware of the disadvantage you're working with here. You can try to make demands, but the truth is, neither of you has the slightest damn clue what you're doing. While Wilbur could feel the frustration building inside of him, he could also recognize bait when it was laid out so plainly in front of him. Which is a disadvantage you're going to exploit, Wilbur said coolly, ignoring the way Tommy was fuming beside him. I'd be a fool not to, Philza replied, his sharp smile pinning Wilbur down and making him feel like everything inside of him was being pulled out and put on display. Still, Wilbur did his best to hold on to his head. But you're also telling us up front about the weakness we have, which presumably is our lack of personal experience in these matters. So why tell us that? Why not let the Imperator continue to goad my brother with taunts, trying to make him frustrated enough that he refuses to listen to my advice? I wouldn't do that! Tommy cut in, frowning at Wilbur. Sighing, Wilbur gave Tommy a look that read, "Don't cut into this." Thankfully, Tommy got the hint, and slumped back in his seat with a pout on his face. Meanwhile, Philza had started laughing again. "You might know how to dress up your words better, but I can see where Prince Theseus gets his mouth from. I'm unsure if you mean that as a compliment or an insult." "That's for you to decide," Philza said, staring down Wilbur with eyes so cold they sent shivers down his spine. There was something about Philza that Wilbur was beginning to notice, and it was that he always seemed to watch Wilbur more than Tommy when they were having discussions. Wilbur supposed it made sense, since he tended to do more of the talking, but it also felt like Philza was trying to look through him, like there was something searching in his eyes, as if he wanted to pick apart Wilbur's brain with a pair of tweezers just to see how it worked. Or maybe Wilbur was just unsettled by the Emperor staring him down. That could be it too. "Phil, can you try not being ominous for like 2 seconds? Technoblade suddenly cut in, startling Wilbur out of his thoughts. "You still haven't even told them the actual thing you called them in here for." Phil's smile was replaced with brief confusion, before his eyes widened in understanding. "Oh shit, right. I wanted to mention to you both that we're not going to meet for several days. With this recent news about Eldingvega getting out, there's a lot of discussions I'm going to need to have with the other planets in the Antarctic Empire." "How many days?" Tommy asked, furrowing his brows. Brows. "I don't fucking know, mate. 4, maybe 5 days? Believe it or not, you two aren't exactly my top priority, considering I still have a whole empire to run over here." Philza huffed, his feathers ruffling again. "Besides, it's not like either of you have anywhere else to be." While it was true, it was still frustrated to have pointed out. Philza was right. The two of them were completely at the mercy of the man's schedule. Whenever he decided it was time for them to meet again, that's the only time they would. Wilbur and Tommy quite literally had nowhere else in the galaxy to go, so there was no schedule demanding their attention besides Philza's. It was another show of control, another dig to remind them that despite their rankings and titles in the Antarctic Empire, they wielded no power. "Are we done here for today, then?" Wilbur asked tightly, glaring at Philza. "We're done. Techno and I will be seeing you both soon," Philza said, leaning back in his seat as he waved them off. Biting back a sharp retort, Wilbur tugged Tommy out of the chair, making sure he wasn't going to try and say anything stupid as they headed back towards the doors. Wilbur could feel eyes boring in the back of his head with every step, but he did his best to ignore them and left the room with his shoulders pushed back and chin held high. Fine. If this was a game Philza wanted to play, Wilbur could play too. If he wanted to point out how neither of them was experienced enough for this sort of thing, Wilbur would just have to prove him wrong. Tommy would handle the negotiations. Wilbur would be a good advisor. They would because they had to. Neither one of them had a choice at this point. Either find a solution or die. Those were their only two options. And Wilbur had already had a close call with death for his taste. They would do it. Wilbur was determined. Maybe Wilbur couldn't fight it out on a battlefield, but in a war of words, he could stand the best of them. He could stand with the best of them. And he was going to make sure Philza knew that. Good chapter. I need to learn how to do Amesy's voice because she's Welsh. I can't do Welsh very well. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to follow Bones and the Bees on AO3 and also on Tumblr and Twitter at this thing. Okay, let's do this. Turn off window capture. Black screen for just a moment. What is that thing called? I made a note of it. Choices of robots. Okay. Let's see what this is about. Well, there's something called Choice of Robots. It's an epic 300,000-word interactive sci-fi novel by Kevin Gold, where your choices control the story. It's entirely text-based. It's entirely text-based without graphics or sound effects and fueled by the vast, unstoppable power of your imagination. God, sorry. That's my Discord notifications, if you can hear that. Sorry. Let me just... The robots you design will change the world. Will you show them the true meaning of love or conquer Alaska with your robot army? Without graphics or sound effects and fueled by the vast unstoppable play out 30 years of your life as a brilliant robot maker from graduate school near the present day to a future in which your robots have changed everything. Depending on your choices, your robots may be independent or obedient, clumsy or graceful, empathetic or cold, and you yourself may live to an old age, happily married or alone with only robots to comfort you. Goddamn! Play as male or female, gay or straight, with 9 characters to romance, 4 alternate climax chapters, and over 70 achievements to unlock. Okay. Customer reviews overwhelmingly positive. It's a cute story, come on. Hey, I haven't read the full thing. I'll take your word for it that it's cute. Let me just go through the reviews and just make sure. Unexpectedly wonderful experience. Okay. Good reviews on Steam. What the hell? Why not? Let's give it a shot. Let me see. Is there a... If it's on Steam, surely there's a category for it on Twitch. Choice of robots. Found it. I have no idea how long the chapters are. We'll read through as much as I can without getting tired. Play now for free. Okay, let me bring up the window capture back again. Hey, I'm a streamer. I know how to do things. Turn back on window capture. There we go. Let's see. Okay. If I like the story so far, I will buy it on Steam and finish it. I should probably change the title as well now that I think about it. 1 second. There we go. The reviews on Steam were pretty good, so I have high hopes for this. Let's see. Where are you? In the court of the Egyptian god Anubis, answering for my sins. On a war-torn battlefield with a robotic Statue of Liberty. On a cliff in Ireland, watching the sunset with a robot companion. On a utopian beach ruled by a cloud-like god of robots. I like the idea of this. I'm gonna go for this. Sitting on a seaside cliff in Ireland, watching the sunset, is the robot companion you always wanted. He proposed to me at this very spot. She proposed to me at this very spot. He and I traveled the world together exploring. She and I traveled the world together exploring. She and I travel the world together exploring. You two are the best of friends. She is clothed in a loose-fitting red tunic, and she shoots you a puckish, friendly look. You sit down beside her to watch the sunset together. I hope I didn't keep you waiting, you say. Actually, I'm still waiting, she says with a slight smile, for you to build me. I can do that? You say. She looked sad for a moment. Yes, but it will take a lot out of you. She puts her hand on yours. But I promise you that if you give your humanity to me, then I will give it back one day. I don't understand, you say. Just remember that no great thing happens without sacrifice, she says. And I'm sorry. Oh dear. I don't like where this is going already. Some things are in our control and others not. Epictetus. Chapter 1, Assembly. You awaken with your head on a desktop keyboard. Your 3D drafting program is still open. The schematic zoomed in to the recess where your smartphone will snap into its back to act as its brain. Wait. 3D draft, the schematic zoomed in to the recess where... Okay. You recall fiddling with the part end... With that part end... Wait, so good start so far? Don't make fun of me. Recall fiddling with that part endlessly last night, until finally your vision began to fade. There was a roaring in your ears until you realized you had been working far, far too long. You must have passed out. It's the fall of 2019. You're a 24-year-old graduate student in the PhD program in computer science at Stanford. And you're a... Technically, I'm neither of these. So much for representation. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. For the sake of the story, let's say... Girl. whose name is... That is a badass name. Hypatia? Or Hypatia? Or Hypatia? How do you say it? No, actually, Hypatia sounds like a disease. But it looks... The name looks pretty. Yeah, let's go for it. Disease name. Woo! And your last name is Tesla. Maria is good as well. It is a good name. Quain. The exclamation point is a click? Oh, like Quain. Oh, okay. Hypatia Quain. Nah, I'm not gonna do that one. Hypatia Tesla, Hypatia Calvin, Hypatia Tezuka, Hypatia Goldberg. Actually, Hypatia Goldberg sounds pretty good. Let's go with that. You look around your apartment. What does it look like? My BattleBots trophy is perched on a widescreen TV equipped with the latest video game consoles. Neatly labeled plastic shelving units sit on a 3D printer-equipped robot workbench. Busts of famous philosophers sit next to my own attempts to sculpt them. My shelves display all of the little strange robotic creatures I've made over the years. None of these sound like me. Maybe this one the most, actually. Oh, sorry. Let's see. You're a competitive person by nature, okay, yeah, that's true, and you grew interested in artificial intelligence by coding AI for games. When your high school fielded a team for a local BattleBots competition, sponsored by the nearby defense contractor, you eagerly took up the challenge and won with an aggressive bot that would ram the enemy bot while it was still figuring out where it was. You continue to compete at the college level. Military? Bruh. I hate the military. I don't... It strikes you for a moment that this kind of thinking about how your life affects your robots is... Well, when I say I hate the military, actually, I don't hate the military, like, as a whole. I just hate mostly American military. Sorry. Anyway, let's keep going. What's the name? I've seen that email before. What's the name of it? Oh yeah, that's Kappa. Forgot what it means, but I think it means something bad. It strikes you for a moment that this kind of thinking about how your life affects your robots is second nature to you, though others might find it peculiar. You've always been fascinated by how every little detail of your life, from the content of your dreams to the decor of your room, changes the inputs to the robots you create, boosts their empathy or autonomy or grace or appeal to the military. Surely there are other things going on around you as a result of your decisions, but they don't immediately strike you in the same way. Today, your robot is foremost on your mind because you're about to build its body. You pick up your laptop and head for the Stanford machine shop. You will understand why it says that, don't worry. Okay. It is a beautiful spring day in Palo Alto, California, and your apartment is only a short walk from the machine shop. But the streets of Palo Alto are not designed for walking. You find yourself climbing around palm trees and balancing on narrow curbs, as you do every day. You hear a low roar overhead. Glancing up, you see it's a flying car. A Nimbus. A little over $300,000 can buy you a car with wings that fold out, so that it becomes a small sport plane. The red Nimbus looks sleek and sporty, It's the sort of car its owner takes religiously to the car wash. Though the commercials would have you believe you can fly anywhere you want in those cars, the FAA still requires them to take off and land from airports. Only here in wealthy Silicon Valley do you see them with any frequency. The first time you saw one, you couldn't quite believe the future had arrived so quickly. By the second time you saw one, you thought, I will own one of those one day, I swear it. If I ever make that much money, I'll use it to help the world instead of buying that car. Why aren't those flying cars driving themselves? What's something I would think? If I saw a flying car for the second time, would I want it, is the thing. Because I'm terrified of heights. Also, I don't know how to drive, so I'd probably, if I ever make that much money, I'll use it to help the world instead of buying that car. You don't understand Silicon Valley sometimes. If you had $300,000, surely you could save many lives with that money. You promise yourself that you will hang on to your ideals, even if you should become wealthy. The way that this is formatted kind of reminds me of the trolley problem game. The Stanford University fabrication shop smells like oil and burnt plastic. The room is dominated by large metal, hand-cranked milling machines and lathes, dinosaurs of the 20th century, while the most used machines are the smaller 3D printers and computer-controlled water jet cutters that take a quarter of the space. The lights have the sterile fluorescence of an operating room, with only a single tiny window near the ceiling to inform you that it is day. You start up a national public radio podcast on your laptop. You haven't seen your advisor much since you joined the lab, so you choose the episode in which he's the interviewee. My guest today is Dr. Harvey Ziegler, says a woman with a soothing voice. Dr. Ziegler, thank you for talking with us today. Well, a scientist does have some responsibility to inform the unwashed masses, Terry. You let the podcast run as you walk over to the 3D printers. What material have you decided to use for your robot? Plastic. It may break easily, but it's both lightweight and cheap. Metal. It's most resistant to damage. Wood. It is the most pleasing to the hand and eye. I would not make something out of wood. I hate splinters. Probably metal. You walk over to the computer-controlled water jet cutter, where a helpful pictogram shows the jet of abrasive-filled water slicing a hand in two. Dr. Ziegler, in your new book, you talk about the singularity. Could you describe for our listeners what that is? Terry, the singularity is the coming time when artificial intelligences will have figured out how to make themselves, and us, smarter. Once that happens, the process will build on itself until the robots are smart enough to figure out how we can live forever. Is that possible? The interviewer asks. Living forever? Of course, Professor Ziegler says. What does it matter whether our operating systems are made out of meat or silicon? So you're pretending we'll become robots? Not exactly, Ziegler says. But I do think the line between humans and robots will blur. Hold on. Is my YouTube... Where's my mouse? There it is. Oh, video paused. Oh, the video ended. Oh, that's because I didn't start it from the beginning like I thought. Like at the beginning of stream. Whoops! You are hardly listening to the podcast, but you're about to make your first robot part. What does the head of your robot look like? A human face, as lifelike as I can make it. A simple box with eyes, clearly not trying to be anything but a robot. It will be felt covered and big-eyed, like a puppet, so people will not be afraid of it. It will have a ring of cameras around its head for a 360-degree view. It will look like a Venetian mask, beautiful, expressionless, and otherworldly. I like the idea of it being like a puppet. I'm gonna make it a puppet. The water jet cutter is only creating the frame now, so it actually looks a little disturbing, like a puppet skull. When the frame is done, you decide to glue down the cloth immediately and attach the big plastic eyes that make your robot look friendly and innocent. Ah, much better. Dr. Ziegler, what makes you think the singularity will happen now? Well, for one thing, I'm around. But seriously, my lab is taking a unique approach because we're saying, why not teach a robot like a child? We're going to equip the robot with the best sensors money can buy and teach it English. Then it could rapidly teach itself using the internet. Well, that's annoying. Your advisor thought that a robot child was a stupid idea until you told him Turing proposed it back in 1950, minus the internet part. But he isn't giving credit to either of you. You keep working regardless. How will your robot get around? It'll walk upright on 2 legs, it'll crawl on 8 legs, it'll roll on wheels, it'll fly like a helicopter, it'll roll on tank treads, it'll walk upright, but will also have delicate wings it can use for balance. Wings. You stretch a polyester film between the metal spokes of the wings, and then attach these to your robot's back. These wings should give your bipedal robot better balance, and in case it does begin to fall, they will act as a kind of parachute that will give it more time to recover. However, angles are not known for being approachable, and your robot's appearance will set it apart from people. Man. You use the basic hand-craned milling machines to drill holes in the head for screws, since water jet cutters aren't the best for threaded holes. And who is going to raise this robotic child? The interviewer asks. Who does all the grunt work in a research laboratory? Professor Ziegler says. The graduate students, of course. You find yourself wanting to reply to the podcast. It's not grunt work. Education is critical to the robot's development. We also do all of the real science. Perhaps you could learn something from doing a little grunt work yourself, Professor Ziegler. Sheesh! Damn! I like the first one. I don't want to be too mean. Graduate students always overestimate the degree to which teaching actually matters, says Professor Ziegler, who appears to have entered the machine shop behind you when you weren't looking. If the robot's smart, it'll learn no matter what, and if it's not, it won't. Professor Ziegler is a heavy-set man wearing a Hawaiian shirt and aviator sunglasses. Robert! No, I'm kidding. He stalks over to your computer. We'll be back in a moment, continues the interviewer. We're talking with Professor Ziegler pauses the podcast by hitting your laptop's spacebar, and you flinch at this intrusion. I lost my spot. There it is. He then pulls a cigar from his pocket and lights it, and the smell of smoke mingles with the oily smell of the machine shop. I'm writing a grant for DARPA, and I need to see what you're making back here. We ultimately get funded by the Department of Defense, so we have to make sure they're happy with our product. He casts a critical eye on the work you've done so far. Metal's a good choice, Ziegler says. They'll want things that appear durable in the field. Professor Ziegler turns to examine your robot's head, which is currently sitting on the table next to the water jet cutter. You've got to be kidding me, Ziegler says. I'm not selling a Muppet to DARPA. It's not for them, you say. It's for kids. It's supposed to be a pleasant presence around the house. Why are you so fixated on DARPA? Can't we get funding from the National Science Foundation? NSF grants are a killing field, Ziegler grouses. The amounts of money are tiny compared to defense research, and you have to be the best of the best to get any funding at all. You privately wonder if that's just Professor Ziegler's perception. You decide to try to apply to an NSF grant if you can find the time. And what are you planning to do for the arms and hands? Professor Ziegler says. Tyrannosaurus Rex was the most intimidating dinosaur imaginable, wasn't it? It will have T-Rex arms. It will have a gun for an arm, like Mega Man. Mechanical grippers built for strength instead of dexterity. I was thinking sort of Swiss Army knife hands with tools that pop out of the fingers. I plan to build a soft hand with a good sense of touch. I was thinking, why just 2 arms? It will have lots of arms springing out of its back like Inspector Gadget. You see, without context, I probably would have chosen something else. But I don't want this robot to... I don't like the idea of defense robots, you know? Like using robots for war. So I'm gonna choose this one out of spite. Touchy-feely robots are not quite as easy to sell to DARPA, Ziegler says with a frown. It was on purpose? Oh, all the choices? I want my robot to get along with people, you say. That's a universally useful goal, regardless of who's funding it. Fine, Ziegler says, waving away further explanation. Carry on then. He turns to leave. I've got to go take a call from a New York Times reporter. Funny how journalists all copy each other's stories, but each garble the message in a unique way. He makes it to the door, then turns and says, Oh, and one more thing. Do you think your robot can be ready by tomorrow? Someone from the Air Force will be in town, and I told her your robot might be ready to show off by then. You feel your phone vibrating in your pocket. Bad timing. You resist the urge to check it while talking to your advisor, but it's probably someone with a better offer for what to do tonight. No, there's no way this robot will be done by tomorrow, sorry. The robot will be done, but a demo will be out of the question. We need to test first. Of course. I don't trust Ziegler. Says Professor Ziegler. Well, enjoy your weekend, he says acidly. Professor Ziegler turns and walks out of the machine shop. You find yourself unclenching your hands. Who was calling you while Professor Ziegler was talking to you? Ellie Lau, a user experience designer and supportive friend. Aiji Aomame, a manga artist and generally good guy. My ambitious friend Josh Anderson, founder of the startup US Robots. manga. From the missed call, your phone is displaying IG's profile photo. It's a picture of Josh and IG from the freshman welcome week dance 7 years ago. IG is wearing a white tuxedo with a red bow tie and making a V sign at the camera. Josh is wearing his usual gray hoodie, not having bothered to dress up for the dance, and his arm is around IG. What is the story behind that picture? I was in love with Josh's friend IG, but my studies always came first in college. I was in love with Josh, but I never knew how to be more than a friend to him. I had agreed to be Josh's wing person at the dance, and that's where he met IG. I was testing a music recognition algorithm when those two started bothering me. Yes, you pined after IG in college, but knew that you would not have the time to pursue romance. Not while you were taking 5 classes, some of them graduate work. That photo is from one of the dances during freshman orientation, before you had homework. But you never went to another one. You continue to hope that someday your perseverance and dedication will pay off, but a little part of you still longs for IG. It's a part you fear, and even though he's working just an hour away in San Francisco, you haven't seen him much recently. You notice that IG also left you a text. IG wants to meet for dinner at a jazz and sushi place in San Francisco, which is about an hour north of you. He also has tickets to a rendition of the musical Pippin, in which most of the characters are robots. Sounds like a date. That's a little terrifying. Sounds great, see you then. Afraid I can't tonight, sorry. Busy tonight, but do you want to come by tomorrow to see the robot? I don't reply, I'd prefer to I would rather go see a musical than work on a robot, I'm sorry. Great, IG texts back. See you then. You spend the rest of the day drilling holes, polishing surfaces, cutting parts, and screwing things together. When you're done, your robot's body stands before you. A metal winged robot with a puppet head and humanoid hands. The whole thing is about 3 feet tall. Now it only needs a name. What will you name your robot? Hatsune Miku! Skipping work, I see. Pickle. I want to name... Pickle sounds so cute for a robot. Kill all, no. Ariel, Caliban, Famulus, Guardy Lou. I prefer to come up with my own robot. It's between Pickle and Miku. I wanna choose Miku just because of the Hatsune Miku thing. But the thing is, Pickle sounds cute. I want Pickle the puppet robot. Pickle it is. To pickle data is to write it to disk so that it stays around. You worked so much with pickle files while working on Pickle's learning algorithms that it became a natural name for the robot. Okay, you see, I did not know that. I don't know anything about technology, so... Now that Pickle has a body, it might be time to treat Pickle more like a person. With what pronouns will you refer to Pickle? Neopronouns? Pickle the neopronouns user? But I feel like, Wait, what's that? Wait, what's that emote? Pride laugh? You know what? Yeah, sure, why not? Neopronouns! You equally dislike the objectification implied by it, and the genderedness implied by he and she. Robots are their own things, you reason. Robot he, robot she. Re? You decide to balance the other pronouns between the genders. Rer for the possessive, rim for the objective. It may be difficult to get anyone else to use the words, but as long as your robot robots use them amongst themselves, you'll be happy. You look on Pickle's 3-foot-tall winged body with satisfaction. Now all Ree needs are motors and a mind. The motors will have to wait for tomorrow, but you've spent years in graduate school writing the code that would form this robot's mind. You can hardly wait to try it out. You take out your smartphone to check the time. It's almost evening. You hurry home to prepare for your dinner with IG. How long is this game? Because it's in like chapters, right? How much longer is chapter 1? A contemplative sax solo greets you as you open the door to Yoshi's. Yoshi? Sorry. The place is a little cramped and very busy. A tiny jazz quartet is set up in the far corner of the restaurant. Getting tired? Look, a bit. I'm gonna go on for a little bit longer. I don't know if I'll have the stamina to finish the chapter this stream. The place is a little cramped and very busy. A tiny jazz quartet is set up in the far corner of the restaurant. Piano, drum set, sax, and a petite Japanese woman in a kimono holding a mic but directing her attention to the soloist. It's almost finishing? Okay. Near the band, IG Aomame is studying a copy of Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, a book about the art of visual storytelling written in comic form. He's wearing a red bow tie, a fuzzy blue sweater, black slacks, and a pair of black loafers. There's a subtle trace of red in his black hair, but it might just be the light. Still intent on his book, he takes out a pencil from his pocket and begins sketching from the book on a napkin. You join him at the table. Hey. He looks up and smiles. Hey. He puts away his pencil, book, and napkin. You catch a glimpse of Astro Boy, an old Japanese anime character on the napkin. Wait, Astro Boy was anime? Like, I knew it was Japanese, but, like, I guess I never really thought about how it was an anime. I remember watching, like, the movie from, like, 2009 or something. That's cool. What have you been up to? IG asks. I've been working all day on a new robot, you reply. Just the frame's built right now, but I wish I'd had time to add motors and start its mind running today. I probably could have learned a lot from even this conversation. He casts you a skeptical look. What would you hope it to learn exactly? The rhythm of normal social interaction, how to reconnect with an old friend, how not to talk to a guy. Negative examples are important. I like this one. He grins. Right on, I had the same idea. Do you want to come by tomorrow and see him after I power him on? You ask. It's gonna be really cool. IG shrugs. Sure, sounds good. It is a Sunday tomorrow after all, and I'm curious to see you interacting with one of your robots. You used to rave about them all the time, but I don't think I ever saw one. IG cocks his head, to one side. What is it with you and robots anyway? Haven't you ever wanted to change the world? I think I just find them comforting somehow, like very confused pets. I think you'll find I'm not the most introspective person in the world. I like that one. IG grins. I could say the same about you. He leans over and ruffles your hair. Don't ever do that again. I actually worked kind of hard on my hair for tonight. Thanks. Ruffle his hair playfully. Thanks. IG grins. Are you two ready to order? You've both hardly looked at the menu, so you have to tell the waitress to come back. The tastiest maki rolls look like they're named after jazz standards. When the waitress returns, you tell her you'll have the invitation, the don't get around much anymore, the paper moon. Paper moon sounds good, I want that. When the waitress leaves, IG says, Paper moon is such a cute song. He sings. I don't know what the song is, so I'm just gonna be. But it wouldn't make make believe if you believed in me. He considers you. Doesn't surprise me. You're the sort of person who wants to make dreams real. Thanks, you say. You're beginning to think he might like you. Like. Score! So, okay, he says. Let's say that you succeed. Robots are among us. Among us, you say? I'm sorry. Man. Sorry. I had to. It was too easy. Anyway. Robots are among us. What's good about that? What do you want them to do? What just happened? Do you not know that song? They could do all kinds of things for us. Do the dishes, mow the lawn. I think it would be interesting to have someone to talk to that isn't a human being. I wonder what they'd say. If I said take over the world, do you think I'm crazy? I just want to make something beautiful. You searched for the song. Yeah, I did. I thought of it the moment that I saw that sentence. IG blinks. Huh. I wasn't expecting you to say that. You take out your smartphone, the one that's going to become Pickle's mind, and show IG pictures of the frame under construction. Check it out. You know? The more I look at it, the clearer it becomes that you really have a keen design sense, he says. I'm impressed. Thanks, you say. I think you're really going to do something amazing someday, he says. I know it. Cool, you say, grinning a little. This is me! I don't know how to take compliments, so I just say, cool, thanks. The waitress brings your order of paper moon maki and you dig in to eat. Just then, your phone buzzes. You take it out to glance at it. It's reporting malware on your phone's memory card. Is something wrong? IG asks. One sec. You quickly glance at the warning details. Apparently, some kind of virus has decided to take control of your phone's microphone. It appears to be sending the packets of audio data somewhere. Huh. Of all the times that you get a security warning on your phone, who the heck would want to listen to your conversation? You can't really think of anyone. Power off the phone and don't worry about it. Ask to search IG's phone for evidence of similar malware. Just keep copies of the data as it transmits. It'll be useful for training Pickle. Can I see your phone for a second? You ask. IG visibly tenses. Why? I just got a weird security warning. I thought maybe you'd see the same thing. Unlikely. IG shows you his phone. Apple? You show him yours. Android. Thought so. You grin. Likewise. You blurted that without really thinking about it. Of course IG would be an Apple user. And now you sort of regret it. Like, maybe this is a thing that would come between you. The way people who owned GameCubes when you were young were just a little standoffish from the PlayStation owners and vice versa. You suppose you could insist on checking his phone for malware, but it might seem a little crazy at this point. Press to see IG's phone, stating that someone appears to be listening to the conversation. Just ask to see IG's phone again, but don't mention the audio recording part. Let it be. Nah, I'm paranoid. I hate to break it to you, but someone appears to be eavesdropping on our conversation. You tell IG. That's what my phone just reported. IG recoils. But why? I don't know, you say. Can you think of anything? IG shakes his head but says, Mom said she often thought people were following her around and asking her weird questions too, but I don't think she ever figured it out. He hands you his phone. Here, you can check if you want. You spend most of the rest of the meal downloading security apps, doing forensics, and reading random things about the state of spyware on the internet. You find some stories from a few years ago about the NSA spreading malware on millions of phones, but after the flap, people seem to have mostly forgotten about it. From your packet captures and the executable checksums on your phone, it looks like this malware is a variant on that spyware. I think maybe this is government spyware, you say reluctantly. Oh. IG says doubtfully. He then forces a grin. Well then, let's give that poor NSA analyst a nice conversation to listen to. You laugh. Alright. He's probably right. Now that you know the conversation is being tapped, you could chat about innocuous things and it won't matter much. But as you put your phone in your pocket, you power it down anyway. You continue the meal chatting about random topics and enjoying the food. IG talks about how it's difficult to meet new people after graduating from college. In addition, the time difference with Japan is substantial, and it makes it difficult for him to chat with his family as often as he'd like. He repeatedly expresses a desire to have some kind of family, until you become fairly certain he is dropping a hint. In college, you had never quite believed someone like IG would be interested in you, but apparently he is. 1 second, my throat is getting a bit sore. Time for a Listerine patch. Is that one of the pride emotes? That's funny. Pippin turns out to be the subject you've been thinking about the most lately. How to live an extraordinary life instead of an ordinary one. IG sold you on this particular production because the supporting cast, everyone but Pippin and the love interest, are all robots. You can see in the play's opening number that the robots are following pre-programmed steps and are not intelligent in themselves. But then that doesn't surprise you. In 2019, artificial intelligence is still mostly being used for handy websites and smartphone apps, not robots. The first song, Corner of the Sky, banger song. I sang that when I was in choir. It is so fun. Is about Pippin's feeling that he doesn't belong anywhere, and wondering what the purpose of his life is. The robots, which look like imitations of Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet, are toiling at ordinary lives while Pippin sings about his wish for something better. This is called an I Wish song, IG whispers to you. I heard on This American Life that all musicals have to start with a song that is about what the protagonist longs for. It's like the unwritten rule of musicals. Honestly, it kind of is, when you think about it. Like, especially with modern musicals as well. Dear Evan Hansen, Waving Through a Window. Heathers, beautiful. Wizard of Oz, Over the Rainbow. That one's not modern, but you know what I mean. Beauty and the Beast. Well, it's technically not the starting song, but the Belle, reprise. You think for a moment about what your I Wish song would be, and suddenly recall your conversation with the robot companion this morning. It was perhaps a peculiar sort of I Wish song. You think of Pickle's new frame you built today. You suppose whatever future that dream was hinting at, you still have a long way to go. You are startled to find that IG has taken a hold of your hand. Squeeze his hand. You squeeze his hand back and realize that, just like that, you're kind of a couple now. You had no idea it could be so easy. The play goes through a series of vignettes in which Pippin leaves one lifestyle after another. He's not content to be a soldier, nor king, nor simple man in love. As Pippin sings about how he's going to leave the woman he met in the countryside to achieve something great, you think, he is right to leave a simple life to achieve something extraordinary. He is a fool to give up his love just because he has delusions of grandeur. You see, this is where I wish I knew the plot of Pippin. Because, well, did he leave his love life for something bigger? It's kind of like what I would assume it's something about, like, something similar to what happened to Hector and Coco. How he left his family to pursue music and left his wife heartbroken. Because I am all for leaving a simple life to achieve something extraordinary, but at the expense of leaving the person you love? I don't think it's worth it. Because honestly, one of the most extraordinary things that could ever happen is falling in love. But I wouldn't say he has delusions of grandeur. But I am leaning more towards this. I hate to say it, but it's what makes the most sense to me. You resolve that you will not be like this self-involved protagonist. You will, above all, live a good life. And if it means not making it into the history books, well, they can talk about someone else for all you care. You're pleased to see that Pippin makes the same choice. Presented with a ring of fire to jump through to achieve greatness, he decides to not go through with it, and returns to his love. Isn't that the hero's journey? To come back to the place you knew and appreciated? Why not love your home from the beginning? But perhaps you are the sort of person who will get wrapped up in history whether you will it or not. Who knows? Since the evening is going well, IG asks to see more of your robots. But that would mean going back to my place, you say. And then you say, oh. You return to your apartment and flick on the light, somewhat embarrassed at the unmade bed and mess of clothes you've left on the floor. I'm sorry you couldn't see my robot in action tonight, you say. Here, check this out. You show IG a little 8-legged robot with an old smartphone for a body. What is it with you and phone robots? IG asks. Well, I hate to throw out my old phone when my plan gives me a free one, you respond. The processor's usually still as powerful as a desktop from a few years ago. So I use my old phones for robots. This one does simultaneous localization and mapping, or SLAM for short. You power on the robot and let it go on your floor. It promptly starts ramming the trash next to your bed. Slam, you say. IG says, amused. It worked in college. Isn't it a little dark in here? IG says. He peers up at your fishbowl-shaped light fixture. I think one of the bulbs is out up there. He stands on a chair, quickly unscrews the light fixture, and hands it to you. Indeed, one of the 2 light bulbs underneath is out. Thanks, you say, a little embarrassed. The light fixture is also hella dusty. You have another? He asks, unscrewing the dead bulb. No, you say. Then an idea strikes you. I think pickles are luminescent when you electrify them. I saw it on the Discovery Channel once. I have one in my fridge. IG gives you a dubious but curious look. Come on, pickle. You're right, it's probably not bright enough for the robot. I'll ask my neighbors for a CFL bulb, or we could just leave the lights off. You see, I don't like this. I don't like this idea. IG waits as you knock on your neighbor's door. He comes to the door wearing only a towel, and the room behind him is somewhat dimly lit. You think you hear a woman's giggle from inside. A CFL bulb? Sure, I hate those things. Totally kill the mood. You hesitate to follow your neighbor into his room, and he returns in short order with a CFL bulb. When you return to IG, your phone robot is still poking around the room in the dark. You climb onto your chair again. Hey, how many machine learning experts does it take to change a light bulb? How many? IG asks. Just one, but it doesn't work very well. She just keeps pointing to the sun and expects the light bulb to get the idea. IG laughs. Excuse me. Told a light achievement. Bright. You told a light bulb joke. How romantic. I don't know if the achievement showed up on screen, but that's funny. Oh, it did. The room is awash in harsh light from the CFL bulb. Your phone robot is now exploring the four corners of the room, showing curiosity about every strayed piece of laundry on the floor. You realize that if you copy the map it makes, you could give Pickle a head start on exploring the world tomorrow. Kiss IG, then call it a night. Kiss IG, then see if things go farther. Hug IG. Kiss IG, then call it a night. I do not want to read NSFW on stream. He enthusiastically returns the kiss. I should go, IG says, checking his smartphone. I'll miss the last train. Alright, you say. It was good seeing you. You too. You invite IG to watch you activate Pickle tomorrow, and he happily agrees, though neither of you calls it a date. You remain awake for much of the night, your mind racing with plans for what to show IG tomorrow. It is a good story so far. I'll probably do chapter 2 at some point. Really soon, I would assume. I'm not gonna... What? Sorry, it's not that I don't believe you. I just... You can... I just didn't know for sure. Also, I figured you wouldn't recommend me anything that's not NSFW. So I was like, what if what actually happens is it tries to make things farther and that's not what he wants and he just it makes it awkward, you know? I didn't want to be in an awkward, I cannot speak, situation like that, so I figured that was the best option. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Alright. I streamed for a lot longer than I anticipated, but this is a good story. I'm definitely going to continue it at some point. I chose this one for you just to avoid some love descriptions. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. Alright. I think that is going to be my stream. Stick around because I'm going to be raiding somebody. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. And if you're new to viewing my streams, be sure to leave a follow, because at 150 followers, I'm going to be doing an entire stream in a British accent. So that'll be fun. Let's raid you. Alright. Wait, hold on, wait, no, are they... Hold on 1 second. Are they... Oh, never mind. They're ending. Let's find somebody else. 1 second. They're ending stream. 1 second. Oh, I know. Let's do you instead. There we go. I don't think they're ending, so... Alright. Thank you so much for watching. I might stream tomorrow, but it's probably going to be Minecraft. I want to play on my single-player server again. Alright. I will see you guys tomorrow, probably, maybe. Keep an eye out for it. Follow me on Twitter, at Claymation with 3 N's, if you want to be updated on when I'm going to be live next. Alright?